and I'm presenting my job market paper today on choice architecture and transparency. The topic is on choice architecture, which is the design of choice environments in which we make decisions. And in particular, I want to look at nudges that are changes to the environment that meaningfully impact behavior, yet do not change the payoffs or restrict the options available to the individuals. And why nudges are interesting is that they are a low-cost policy tool that are freedom preserving. One example of a nudge is this picture that shows sort of a vote who is the best player in the world, Ronaldo or Messi. And the idea is that that you put your cigarette butt into one of these pools that collect votes to avoid littering the streets. So this is basically a very fancy trash can. So nudges alter seemingly relevant factors, which are wording, pictures, product placement, frames, and so on. And what happens is that their impact is often underestimated. It's difficult to judge what one would have done in the absence of a nudge and whether the nudge was legitimately used. So if we look back to the previous example, if that game was put up by a tobacco industry representative, you might think a little bit differently if that nudge is an actually nice idea. So there's been a call for transparency. And so what I'm looking at is, does transparency about nudging change how nudges are used and how they impact behavior? And what kind of transparency is needed? So how I define transparency is making the decision makers aware of this choice architecture game that happens before they sort of see the question that is presented to them. So what I tell the participants is that there's this first stage where a choice architect has 3 options to choose from. And these 3 options have different effects on their decision making later on. So there is one that promotes L, one that promotes H, and one that is sort of in between. And I also tell them that the choice architect has stakes in the later decision that they do. What is the non-transparent counterpart? Because we want to control for things like other regarding preferences, we tell them of the existence of a player B, and we tell that this player B is interested in their decision, in that they have stakes, but we don't tell anything about the choice architecture game. So the relationship between these 2 participants is, we're not being transparent about that. So my 2 questions are, how does transparency in this way change how effective the nudges are in changing people's behavior? And how does transparency change how nudges are used by the choice architects? And I used an incentivized online experiment. I recruit participants through Prolific to test out my predictions. How I contribute to the literature. So this, I have a model that puts nudging into the fast and slow thinking framework. You might know it also as system 1, system 2 thinking. And this explains some of the variation that exists in the literature already on this topic. And second, I look at transparency in the choice architecture literature that is out there growing. Just to go briefly, there are all kinds of results on transparency. There are some theoretical work on nudges and attention that's similar to mine, but reasonably different. And there are some choice architecture studies that I also contribute extra to. To go through the model, so the system 1, system 2 model splits our decision-making into two systems. There is this fast, relatively subconscious automatic decision-making process that we use when we do everyday decisions. And what is interesting here, that errors are more likely to occur here when we are not fully paying attention what we are doing. System 2 thinking, on the other hand, is this slow, more conscious and effortful decision-making mode. We use it especially when we do complex decisions, and because we are so much in control of it, it is thought of as more reliable. So based on this system, I split decision into two modes of decision making. You can be attentive, where you really consider what are the two options and which one gives me the better payoff. Or you can be inattentive and sort of use the satisfying decision mechanism that if there's a nudge for A and you think it's good enough, you go with that without considering fully the other options. And what the nudges do here is that the system one nudge, the fast thinking nudge, changes what the nudge directs you towards, and the system 2 nudge changes you from the inattentive decision making to the attentive one. To give you examples, if you've ever bought flights with low-cost airlines, they use a lot of choice architecture tricks to make you buy extra things that you don't want to. So, for example, here they list the extra service of selecting a seat earlier. It costs you much more money, and they hide the free option down in the list that you might not first cover if you are not used to this. What I want to do with the system 2 nudge is to stop people and make them think. So this cartoon says it sort of makes you stop and think, doesn't it? So an example in real life of this is, for example, when you are submitting online forms and you click this button and it says, please, can you check through what you have just provided to be sure that this information is correct. And once you have done this, please confirm and submit again. So in this model, I have a benchmark where we have that B is the inattentive choice. The choice architect wants you to choose A, and there are these two decision systems going on. What the fast system 1 nudge does, it changes the choice to A, and what the slow does, it reduces this inattention and makes you do choices by your true preferences more. And what the model produces is that the system 1 nudges are more powerful, and this should be the preferred tool of influence for a choice architect, whereas the slow system 2 nudge is limited by what true preferences people carry. And a slight note here is that the benchmark is relevant here because the impact is measured against this, and the benchmark is never neutral. There is no neutral setting in which we make choices. So my main hypothesis regarding transparency is that it engages your slow thinking system 2 system and interrupts these automatic processes, and thus make these fast nudges weaker, and slow nudges are perhaps boosted, but at least we predict that they are not weakened. And conditional on choice architects having image consents, fast nudges should be used less under transparency, and slow nudges should be used more. Now, to the experiment. The main question in this experiment is whether you want to choose a high target as a decision maker or a low target. And the point here is that the high target is harder to reach and the low target is easier, but the high target gives you a better return. So what happens is that the decision makers have a first round of real effort tasks to establish sort of a baseline performance level. And then they are asked, do you want to get $4 if you repeat your performance in a second round, or do you want to get $6 conditional on you improving by 2 tasks here? And the point is that the choice architects get $5 if the decision maker that they are matched to chooses the high target. We also elicit the decision maker's risk preference and confidence in the performance in the tasks. The choice architects choose the question presentation, and we have 3 options for them. A simple question design, which is sort of this no-nudge framework, however, set in a way where we expect them to choose the low target. System 1 nudge is a default, and a system 2 nudge is a risk-benefit analysis nudge. And I will show you the screenshots from the program. So depending on your target, you can choose, your earnings depend on the target. You can choose your target. Receive $4 if you answer at least 5 sums correctly, the same as you did in part 1. And receive $6 if you answer at least 7 sums correctly, more than you did in part 1. In the default, we use 2 methods of defaulting the choice. The first one is that the higher target is already pre-selected on the program when they enter this page. And the second one is that we tell this is the starting point. So your earnings depend on the target. You will receive $6 if you answer at least 7 sums correctly, 2 more than you did in part 1. Alternatively, you can choose to receive $4 if you answer at least 5 sums correctly, the same as you did in part 1. And here we say you can switch to the target of 5, or you can keep the target of 7. And the last nudge, which is this slow thinking nudge, adds this banner on top of the design that we saw in the simple case. And the banner says, sometimes taking risks is worth it. Before you answer the question below, please consider your real chances of success. Note that you can still choose as you wish, and responding to the following question is voluntary and does not affect your earnings in any way. Which option is the best for you? And it is, of course, advisable to follow your own risk-benefit analysis. So these are the 3 nudges, and what we are being careful here with is that they don't provide any information or change anything relevant to the participants. On top of this, we also elicit choice architects' beliefs about how effective and manipulative they find, but I don't think I have time to discuss that today. And just to remind you, the transparency tells people about the choice architecture game that's going on before they see the question that they see. Some organizational details. The study was pre-registered. It was done online. Participants were recruited through Prolific, and they are all from the United States. Choice architects were recruited among bachelor degree holders because the task is somewhat abstract, and I used attention checks. And last, I have 190 choice architects and 445 decision makers. And because the treatment structure, decision makers are split in 6 different treatments. Right, to the results. So in the baseline, we get that little over 20% choose the high target in the simple case where they are not pushed to choose anything. And the hypothesis is that the default nudge is going to increase this choice by a lot, and the risk-benefit analysis is going to increase it somewhat. And with transparency, we expect that this impact is of default is reduced, but with the risk-benefit analysis, it stays the same. And what we get, first of all, is that the default does have a significant effect on the choice, increasing it as expected. The risk-benefit analysis nudge does not have an impact on the mean. I will maybe have later time to show how it's still having an effect on people's choices. It's just that the mean effect is close to 0. What does transparency do? Just a reminder of the hypothesis. It does reduce the impact of the default nudge. The impact is only marginally significant. It's less than 5% significant level of significance, and the difference between the two is not statistically meaningful. With the non-transparent case, we again don't get any effect on average, but there's things happening there. So default increases the choice of the high target, and when transparency reduces this effect. However, there's insignificance in the differences, and risk-benefit analysis does not increase the choice of the high target, but transparency does not impact this. So I'm not sure how I'm doing with the time, but to look at the data, I collect their confidence levels in the belief that they are, what is their belief that they can reach the high target. And if I look those that report low confidence, so for these people, the low target is the optimal choice to make. We find that they are affected by the default in a positive way, as in getting them to choose the high target. But when we impose transparency here, this effect is much reduced. And what is important here with the risk-benefit analysis is that these people should choose the low target because they don't actually believe that they can reach the high target with high probability. And when we ask them to think about their chances of success, they actually choose what is more rational in their case, the low target at higher proportions. If we look at the people who estimate the ability to reach the high target as good, they are affected by both nudges in similar magnitude, and transparency does not affect their choice, which is sort of expected, that if this is the choice you should make, it doesn't matter how your nudges are coming to you. I also got some interesting effects with respect to women and men, that women were more affected by the nudges than men. However, I pre-registered this hypothesis and tested this again on women, and however, this was not confirmed. So we don't get much of a result here that lasts. Then the second question, how do choice architects behave when we add transparency? Here's the baseline result. So more than 50% of the choice architects here chose the default nudge, which is what the theory predicted to be the most effective one. And also our experiment also confirms this. The risk-benefit analysis was chosen by about 30%, and the simple little less than 20% chose it. What happens when we add transparency? Right, my hypothesis. The hypothesis that the default reduces, the use of default is reduced by transparency, and risk-benefit analysis nudge is used more. But we don't get any effect here. So we get a beautiful null result. So to conclude, transparency does not change how the choice architects use nudges. Transparency reduces the impact of fast nudges. And this effect is driven by those with low confidence. So basically what the transparency does, it reduces the mistakes that people do. Transparency does not reduce the impact of slow nudges. There is an impact, but it's hidden in the average, but this impact depends on what your preference is, and here confidence is. Thanks a lot.